I really have to set the context here with NAPCIS, because this is such a phenomenal leap with this organization. Having been in existence for 30 years, we're going to recognize Eileen Kubanski, who was the executive director for 29 years, and Joe Norton, who actually was the principal of one of the oldest private independent Catholic schools, Holy Angels, in Louisville, Kentucky. They just celebrated their 50th anniversary in 2023. So, and Joe has been in Catholic education for over 30 years. There he is back there. So, but anyway, so Eileen, this is what we're going to talk about, a brief history of NAPCIS. The new NAPCIS Standards of Excellence, integration with the Newman Guide, because it's a twofer, you get 2 for 1. And then NAPCIS accreditation, the process very quickly, I want to go through that. Everything is going to be online, it's so streamlined. And then the benefits of both Newman Guide recognition with everything that Kelly does to promote your schools nationally. It's not just locally anymore, you've got a big footprint. And then the benefits of NAPCIS accreditation as well. So the first thing, if you've ever been to a NAPCIS gathering, a couple of us have been to a few, you would see Eileen, and she would stand in front, a beautiful woman, and she would tell us the story of the founding of NAPCIS. And without a doubt, she would say the same thing every single time that we came together. And she would say, this is her story, she wrote it for me, the seed of NAPCIS was planted in the summer of 1993 at the first national gathering of independent schools at Villa de Marie Academy in Scottsdale, Arizona. There were 7 schools at that time, and they had all been assisted in their starting by the founder of Colby Academy, Francis and Margaret Karate, and Jerry and Diane Muth. And by the way, the Rawls are here. This is Jerry and Diane's daughter, Mary Rawls, and her son, Chris, are both here today, and we'll see them this evening again. We had all come to know of Colby Academy and its great record of success since it opened in 1980, when we could no longer ignore the Holy Spirit's tap on the shoulder or for some of us, his 2x4 to the side of the head to start a school. We turned to Colby Academy to find the person in Francis Karate, who gave so unselfishly of his time and expertise to get us past the I must be crazy phase to the reality of starting a school. At this meeting, the founders of the 7 schools agreed on the need for an association to represent and support independent schools. Schools that would seem, from those present at the meeting, were growing at a rate that merited being called a movement. Diane Muth put into proper perspective the purpose of these schools. It's about salvation of souls and academic excellence, adding, if you remember that, everything else will fall into place. And then in 1995, they incorporated. So NAPCIS is 31 years old right now. But at that time, it was a movement. This was, this was after Land of Lakes, and the colleges had declared their own freedom from the church. So the founders of NAPCIS were very well aware of that. So their first thing was fidelity to the magisterium of the Catholic Church and taking that oath of fidelity. So the original board members, and I just have to show, it was Fran and Margie Karate, Eileen Kubanski, and Jerry and Diane Muth, and the others. This was the group that started the National Association of Private Catholic Independent Schools, and that was their logo at that time, which stood for all the different 4 founding schools. Okay. And there's Fran Karate, but this was a movement of the laity and their call, coming off of Vatican II and the call to the laity and our movement within the church and apostolates. We saw in the 1970 to 1980 just 7 schools, independent schools, start up. And then these are the additional schools over time for NAPCIS. So we had 83 in 2023. Those are only the ones that we know about. My colleague, Dr. Dan Guernsey, was the first person nationally that we know about who wrote about private independent Catholic schools and their struggles and strife. And then I came along after him and did my doctoral work on the independent schools and the qualities and components that sustained these schools. Now we just had a student from the University of Mary finish his doctoral work on the relationship between the founder and the governance of the diocese, the superintendent and the bishop. He just finished that. Right now we're looking at a student, I'm a reader, and he is actually working on the charism of the founder, calling it an educational entrepreneurship. And his entire work is surrounded about that call in the church documents. So we're seeing more and more. So this is also a movement. And then I'm thinking with perhaps school choice moving out to more and more states and the federal tax credit, parents have more money. They've got they're walking with their pocketbook and they're saying, you're just not the school that I want for me. Hey, let's get together. And the precedent has been set. There's startup manuals that are being written right now for these independent schools. So Bishop Mengeling in 1980, Joe, tell me, 80-something, 3, he said, he came and he did a presentation to NAPCIS and he said, you are not stepchildren of the church. You are not stepchildren of the church. You have a place. Holds true, and maybe more so, because in 1980, of the independent schools, only 19% were recognized by their bishop as Catholic. And in 2023, 54% were recognized by their bishop as Catholic. Like Holy Angels, they had been around. They had sustained. They knew what they were doing, and the superintendents and the bishop said, this must be a sign. They're doing it. This is good. So get ready. Now, this could be competition for you as well, right? Because you all have wonderful schools. So you've got to see, and you've got to bring these folks along. If they're seeing something, interesting or wanting to do, then you've got to talk with them. It's better to bring everyone together and bring them along. Okay. So NAPCIS actually created about 15 standards of excellence, pretty desperate. They were all over. They mirrored every other accrediting agency that you had. But like I said, obedience to the Pope and the magisterium, profession of faith, and oath of fidelity, those were the hallmarks that you have to have all your faculty profess publicly. So we're looking at Catholic moral teaching and so forth. This is all normal stuff. Curriculum informed by the Catholic tradition. I don't think there's anything in there that is out of the ordinary. So, but faithful to the church, and even at that time, it wasn't quite as necessary to have the integration of the faith into every course. That was way back when. This was my time. This was not your time. Sister, was our time, right? It was just like, we tried to get teachers to actually integrate, but it wasn't, we had pretty standalone courses at that time, I do remember. It was before standards were even thought of. Kelly, you want to hit that next one? So those were the old 15 disparate standards. Remember when I talked about the principles of Catholic identity grounded in the church teachings? You go back into every church document and basically find where the church was saying you should do such and such. Those make up the first 5 principles for the new standards of excellence. Then you have the very necessary Catholic identity. Those are the policies. Those are your protective policies, the preventatives that you put in place to ensure all of your faculty know what is expected of them, that they are to be witnesses, they are to integrate the faith in every subject We look at a strong and structured curriculum. We do have Catholic curriculum standards. We're adding more standards on that. You don't have to use the standards, but your Catholic standards should be up to that level. Don't, give us a lesson that has, counting those angels on the church, or counting, something that's trite, and that's not what we're looking for. Assessment in place, mission-driven personnel, administrative operations. So, you have to have all those things, safety and so forth. Okay. So we have the first 5. These are the first 5 inspired by divine mission. I talked about all of them before. We can go to the next one. And then here's the additional. Now, if we have an institution that has a special charism, say, that they would like to ensure, like the Chesterton folks, they require all of their schools to have daily mass and to have pro-life club. So if your organization or your school or founders have that, we can always add an extra module in there just for you. Okay. Principles of Catholic identity. I think I just talked about it. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, I can go quick through this because I just talked about it all. What we're looking for in those lesson plans, that integration, these are the lesson plans that we require. Some of our schools are doing STEM, but we almost force them to do STEAM. You have to add the faith in there. STEAM and stream. So you could call it whatever you want. And actually, I've seen some that say, we do STEM, it's for marketing purposes, really. But then when you look at their lesson plans, boy, they're great. They've got the faith in there, so. Okay. Admissions, human sexuality. This is the same thing I spoke about before. Literature and the arts. This is where most of the schools, believe it or not, excellent schools. We're going through, looking. This is a great school. And then we've got a literature list that mirrors the public schools' literature list. Same thing. And it's like, no, we use literature in Catholic education for a formative purpose. It's completely different. It should be completely different than your local public school. We choose it purposefully. We don't have many text, but we have those that can ground the student in virtue, recognize vice, and to form them in that moral imagination. Athletics is virtue-based instead of competitive. And then the secular materials and programs. We had so many superintendents calling and saying, can you help us with this program from Fordham? Can you help us with this program from something? And it's a gifted and talented, or it's a special ed, or it's something. And I want to offer it at my school because I have to compete with the neighboring schools. And can I do this? So we said at a certain point in time, we can't review all of these programs, but we're going to give you the parameters to look at that program and decide, does it fit in your Catholic mission? Can we use that? So the secular materials and programs, I think it's got a checklist. It's great. You can just look at something and say, yeah, we could use this, or no, we can't. But it announces to your faculty whether they should even step a program up to you as an administrator, because they already know the parameters. I see some of you are like, go on the website, check out the checklist, and then you'll see exactly what we're talking about. Okay. We look at faculty contracts, faculty evaluation forms. If you're requiring something of a individual, then you probably should evaluate it. We look at the fine arts productions, again, clubs and activities. Benefits. Once you go through all that, there's Kelly. She's going to send you this wonderful letter. It's going to say congratulations. The confetti's going to come out all over the place on the email. And you're going to be in the Newman Guide. You're going to have the national recognition all across the board. I mean, there's just so many good things to say about that. But this is the one that I think that we don't get enough of, the Newman Guide Defender. As educators, we're in our silos. We're working without a lot of legal. You know, we're small schools, and we don't have the diocesan lawyer at our beck and call. And so the Defender is the place to read. If you're not getting it right now, see me. We'll talk to Bob Laird. He'll get you on that list. But it's the current legal cases that are coming down and why the policies we're asking you to put in place are so important so that you're not one of those legal cases you'll be reading about. Okay. So how to apply for NAPCIS? You're going to start on the NAPCIS website. Everything is all done, ready for you. Go on that NAPCIS website, napcis.org. You're going to be a candidate first if you're a brand new school, a candidate for 3 years, after which time you have to do the self-study and you have to become accredited or we drop you off. I mean, you can't be a member forever. We're going to help you, move along. But so you've got 3 years. Okay, Kelly. So start there. Basic demographics. It's not really very difficult at all. We do have affirmations for both Newman Guide and NAPCIS that you can read through and then sign those. Upload some preliminary documents. What we're looking for is that you're incorporated. So we're looking for the articles of incorporation, the bylaws, and then your 501c3 letter from IRS. So we have that. We're looking in the articles that you're religious, educational religious, and that you have a legal authority, which is the magisterium of the church. So, we're looking for those types of things. And then you interview with Dan Guernsey, and we talk about if you're ready to move on. So you become a candidate. You're up on the NAPCIS website. You have that candidate status. And then these are some of the things that the school affirms to, basically from the models of from the principles of Catholic identity. One thing that we're seeing with some of our schools that are applying for Newman Guide is that they don't offer Mass at all. And it's like, yeah, well, you got to get it in there. That's the Source and Summit. This is everything that we're about. So sometimes they're good schools. I'm thinking of one school right now, really good school, but logistically, they're way out somewhere, way too far. And they've gotten comfortable with not offering Mass. And it was like, I'm sorry, I can't recommend you. And it was a lot of back and forth, but eventually, they found a way. Think of the grace that those children are receiving now, and the faculty, and the parents. And so good things now are happening at the school. It all comes together if you're centered right. High school theology with the USCCB framework. So some of our institutions really have had to do crosswalks extensively. If you have a humanities program and you're not using like the Didache series or a publisher series that has been approved, then just show me a crosswalk where everything from the USCCB you're doing. And you probably are. You're probably doing foundational documents. You're reading things. Don't leave out Mary, though. That's the one that we've seen. Mary's not there. So we do have the handbook of accompaniment now for publishers for the K-8 grades. So we're hoping that most of our K-8 schools are choosing the publishers that are cycled into that handbook for the accompaniment. We're not holding K-8 schools directly to that yet. If there's a school in question about their religion, then we will. But anyway, affirm the intent to use Catholic standards, affirm for the policies as well. So those are the affirmations, basically, that schools have to agree to. And there's the uploads, handbooks, novels, and do it again, Kelly. So here's the page for your candidacy. I just wanted to show you that page where you're going to start overview, My NAPCIS, create your application, and then upload your documents. We do need budgets as well, as enrollment numbers, your teacher rosters. We're looking for your faculty religious affiliations. And NAPCIS is essential courses, math, science, history, English, must be taught by a Catholic. Okay. $750 per school for accreditation fee, and then annually $5 per student, up to $1,500 max for everyone. Of course, you have a small honorarium for the reviewers who come, but it's a one-day, one reviewer on site, and the others are online. So it's not what we're mostly used to with the accreditation agencies. So real quick, because we know your schools. That's the thing. We know you. I've been there. I know what you're doing. So the application is password protected, so you must go through Dr. Guernsey or me to get the password to begin the application process. And you'll see this. And then you start the self-study, which is right down there. Okay. Self-study's great. It's all online. Here's your completion bar. Here's the 10 modules. You can work on it as a team. First standard, there's your narrative. You're going to write your narrative right in there. You're going to select your artifact. If you want to upload another artifact, say you want to demonstrate or give evidence of something through the school newsletter, but you didn't upload that first. Then you can click here to select one, or you can go back one stage under the artifacts and then upload your newsletter, then select it. So it's just really all clicks. At the end of each standard, you have an opportunity to do a self-assessment, to say what you want to work on, what you're doing well, what you want to work on. And then you can print it, you can see the whole thing, everything that you have done up to this point will come out. This is the reviewer side. We can have 3 reviewers. They're all doing compliance, in compliance, not in compliance on there. And then there also is a spot for them to do their comments for you as well. And then click it again, Kelly, I think. See, there's commendations and recommendations after each standard. So they're reading this at home before they come visit you. And then the person who comes visit you is just confirming. They're looking at safety things. They're looking at your operations, how your school functions, arrival, dismissal, those kind of things, talking with parents and your teachers. But then reviewers also have private notes of things they want to go back to. And wonderful benefits, again, it's just the biggest thing is it's based on the criteria established by the church. And then the best practices in those other areas, the administrative areas, and the areas that we believe as the Cardinal Newman Society are very important for you. So that's the religious freedom areas, making sure those policies are in there, looking at the reading lists and that kind of thing. And I think that's it. You get Newman Guide recommended status. So the Newman Guide recommended status is just laid on top of NAPCIS accreditation. So you get both at one time. And I think that's it, right? Yay, there you are. So you'll be listed up there and get all those benefits. All right, awesome. Oh, question or two? Yep.
So we were NAPCIS accredited about 2 years ago, and I think I read somewhere that there's a time period that you guys would consider to have that Cardinal Newman recognition. What is the time period?
So you have a 5-year recognition period once you're first recognized. So that also is the same with the Newman Guide recommended. We're going to try to marry those up as closely as we can. If we're a year off, we're a year off for Newman Guide. So we'll make sure that those are the same. Right now we have a glut of schools because all of our NAPCIS schools are working through the accreditation process. So if you're really desirous of it right now and you need it for a certain, state tax credit or federal tax credit, now that NAPCIS will be nationally recognized and you want to get state money, talk to us and we'll put you in that loop, just to try to get everyone in. But we've got like 15 already that are working through. And everyone does it individually. So, I mean, if you push forward, you know, and really say, I'm done in 3 months, then we'll put you at the front.
So if I'm already NAPCIS accredited?
Yeah.
Okay, so just the
Yeah.
Newman Guide recognition, I can do.
You can do Newman Guide right now. Yeah, yeah. You can always do Newman Guide. And if you're NAPCIS accredited, do Newman Guide. If you're Newman Guide, you can do NAPCIS accreditation as well. You can do both.
And then I have one more question.
Yeah.
So we just had to fill out some paperwork with the state because they still consider us not accredited because it's NAPCIS. So is there something new that I can take to the state? Or
Yes.
will the states
Yes.
contact things out to that
Right.
just happen?
Yeah, give us a week. It just happened today. I mean, we've been in negotiation and talking, and then DeAngelis called me. Now it's been like 3 hours ago. He just had a meeting. I said, I can't be there because I'm here. And he said, it's good. We got it. And so now we're just kind of looking at the fine details and signing, and we're off. So, yeah, off to the races. Yeah.
One of the slides there showed 80% of the faculty needed to be Catholic. Is that a change from where it was before? Can you talk a little bit about that? I know that it was
Right.
restrictive for some schools in the past.
Yeah, I think for Eileen, and I have it actually written out, she said this is exactly, it's essential teachers. So your homeroom teacher needs to be Catholic if it's first, second, third, fourth grade, right? Science, math, history, English, those folks need to be Catholic. The Cardinal Newman Society has that 80% because in the South it's very hard. Actually, we just rejected a school, a beautiful school, but in the South they just couldn't do it. But they had, there were two at the same time, that they had English teacher and a social studies teacher, and there were only one in the high school of each, and they were both non-Catholic, and they gave lesson plans that didn't understand. They didn't understand, and they couldn't because they don't know. But that goes to your child, and your students are not getting it either. So that's why your schools are so exceptional. And when you're hiring, you're going to hire from the Newman Guy colleges of students who are formed coming out, whether they're education or not. When I taught in the undergrad, I said major in math, science, history, do education as a minor, and then get your catechetical certificate too, because some of these schools have 3 required courses in theology, 2 more, and you've got the minor or a catechetical certificate from the local ordinary. Snap you up. Okay, here we go. Thank you.
How's everybody doing? So Newman Guide is kind of like Michelin star, right? Recommended. They actually have Michelin Guide restaurants too. But so yeah, it's great to be here. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. It's great to see everyone here. Anyone else from Texas in the room? I heard in that room there was some Texas. Where's everybody else from? Are you guys mostly in the D.C. area? Or great. Pennsylvania, Michigan, cool. I actually used to live in D.C. for a little bit when I started doing think tank work. But I grew up in Texas. Back in Texas, I figured I can work from home anyway. I might as well go live and start a family in San Antonio. So that's what I'm doing now. But when it comes to school choice, look, we've come a long way. But at this point, we're basically winning so much, I'm almost getting tired of winning. Just kidding, we're not done yet. We have a long way to go, but we have come a long way since the 19th century. 37 states basically passed so-called Blaine amendments, which are rooted in anti-Catholic bigotry. They went and amended their constitutions to basically say that so-called public dollars can't go to sectarian institutions, which at the time was widely understood to be Catholic institutions, because the public schools in America at the time, for the most part, were de facto Protestant schools. They weren't non-religious. They were just Protestant schools, basically. And so we've actually had to fight with so many of those constitutions in the school choice battles until 2020. During COVID, there was a lot of good things that happened out of the bad when it comes to education freedom. One of those things being the Montana v. Espinoza decision at the Supreme Court, which basically struck a mortal blow to the Blaine amendments, which is fantastic. But now, let's rewind to before 2020, there was 0 states with what I would call universal school choice. So basically what that means is the money that would have followed you to your assigned government-run institution at the K through 12 level, you can still take it there if you want. If you like your public school, you can keep your public school for real this time, and like with your doctor. Actually, it's true that the public schools do get better in response to competition, but if not, you can take that money, usually in the form of a savings account nowadays. It used to be just a pure scholarship before COVID, but now most states are pushing towards the savings account model, and that funding is directed by parents, and you could take it to a Catholic school, you could take it to a other type of religious school, you could take it to a non-religious private school if you want. You could also, people are starting micro schools, which are basically reinventing the one-room schoolhouse, which could be religious or not. And so we've had 18 states pass these universal school choice programs, which are not income capped. Anybody can apply for the funding. I'm from Texas. We thought we would have gotten this across the finish line a long time ago based on who's in charge of our political system there. It's been on their party platform for a long time, but it took until 2025 for them to pass the bill. It's rolling out this year, but even then, it's still targeted in a sense to where everybody can apply regardless of income, background, or zip code, but they capped it in the budget to make it only $1 billion. But in Texas, everything's bigger. So $1 billion may sound like a lot of money, but it's only about 90,000 kids, which is less than 1% of the total 6 million school-age population in Texas. So the next move is to get them to rip the Band-Aid off, like in states like Arizona, Florida, for example, just to give you some just comparison. They have about 600,000 kids on school choice scholarships, and they're a much smaller state than Texas. Arizona has more than Texas, 103,000 kids on these scholarships, which is a much smaller state than even Florida. So we've gone basically from 0 to 100 real quick on the issue. It's really 0 to 18 states. But also at the federal level, anybody hear the big, beautiful bill? There were some good things, there were some bad things. One of the best things was there's something that was originally called the Educational Choice for Children Act. Anybody heard of the federal tax credit scholarship? So basically it got ripped out of the bill at some point by the Senate parliamentarian. They had the power to unilaterally take out the school choice provision in the budget negotiations. Ted Cruz from my home state of Texas and others were able to fight to put it back in. Some things changed in that entire process. Before it was every state was in. Now governors have to decide whether to opt in. So I've been sharing on my Twitter account. Anybody on X in this room? I'm on it too much. I don't need coffee in the mornings anymore because you wake up, you look at the phone, and it's probably bad for my mental health, and I should quit like many others in the room. But I'll keep doing it for now. It's what I do, and I share this map of states that have opted in so far. And this has only been a few months that states have actually been moving on this. And there's already been 31 states that have opted into this new tax credit scholarship program. And it's also, most of the first movers have been Republican-led states with Republican governors. But there have been 2 states. Colorado was the first Democrat governor, Jared Polis, who said, I'm going to do it. And the reason he gave is that he said it was a no-brainer decision, and he said that he would be crazy not to do it. And the rationale here I like to compare to the 21 drinking age. 21 drinking age has every state that voluntarily chooses 21 because it's tied to federal highway funding. There's a similar provision in this school choice program, but it's a little different because it's a tax credit. These are private donations rather than government funding or public dollars or taxpayer dollars. And the idea is anybody can donate and receive this dollar-for-dollar tax credit, which is a big deal by itself. It's $1,700. If I go donate the $1,700 it starts in January 2027 to a scholarship granting organization. So the Cardinal Newman Society can start its own I think you guys might even have one already, a scholarship fund for Cardinal Newman approved schools. If I donated to that fund $1,700, the next tax year when I do my taxes in April, I can get that full $1,700 back. So it's not just a tax benefit, it's basically I'm either giving that same amount of money to the government, where they're going to give it to fraudulent daycares in Minnesota or something, or they're going to give it to a school choice scholarship program for a kid to get a better education, a better shot at life, and to perhaps have a Catholic education, as opposed to the ones in the public schools where they can't have a Catholic education. And so that's basically how it works. And Jared Polis pointed out that, well, if anybody can donate, but you can only get the scholarships if your governor opts in, why would I not do that? Because basically, if Jared Polis were to say, I'm not going to opt in, Colorado residents could donate tons of money to scholarship organizations in Florida and Texas, in New York now. New York intends to opt in as well. Kathy Hochul was quoted at a religious meeting and leaked to the press that she told them that she's going to opt New York in. Now, I got to see it in writing and see. But she did get questions in the press after this kind of leaked to the public, and she reiterated and doubled down and said, why would I give away free money, basically? Public schools could even set up their own scholarship granting organizations, which I don't really like that part of the bill. I think, they already have enough of our tax money to begin with. But if people want to voluntarily donate, okay, go ahead. I think the private sector is probably going to receive more of that funding because you're basically competing with a free good at this point. I mean, Milton Friedman put it best. He said, just imagine if, it's amazing that any private schools exist today, because you're basically, imagine if you had car dealerships that were run by the government and they cost $300,000 to create the car, and maybe it didn't work all that well, and you'd be surprised if any private car dealerships existed at all, but yet you have private Catholic schools that exist today, partially because of the history with the Blaine amendments, and the public schools were not as friendly to Catholic education as we would like. And so this all kind of spurred with COVID, as I pointed out earlier. And the public schools in too many places they just weren't open. I mean, even in my home state of Texas. In Florida, a lot of people were like, well, the public schools opened faster in Florida. Well, that was despite the teachers union sued Governor DeSantis to try to keep the schools closed. I remember posting on social media, they had the union bosses driving around with a hearse around the Capitol to basically say, if you open the schools, you're trying to kill the employees there. I mean, come on, give me a break. And the Catholic schools in so many places were open. And in so much, this stark difference was so apparent that there's a peer-reviewed published study by one of my friends, Michael Hartney. He's affiliated with the Hoover Institution, and his co-author, Leslie Finger. And they found a couple of different things. They found that there was partisan politics tied to the reopenings, and health wasn't really tied to the reopening decisions of different schools in different areas. But they also found one of their side findings was that places that had more Catholic schools in the area at the K-12 level, the public schools were more likely to open too, which gets back to this idea of competition being a rising tide that lifts all boats. A lot of families were basically, they got the short end of the stick. They were trying to figure out, public school families, trying to figure out, what am I going to do with homeschooling? How am I going to pay twice, basically, once for the school system that is not open, and then the schools that are open? How am I going to get my kids there? Well, I'm going to have to figure out how to pay for it. And so a lot of families started demanding school choice. And anybody see the Nation's report card results that just came out? If you tabulate, a lot of people make the state comparisons, right? And some states are doing better than others, nationally not doing so well in the public school system, but they do break out Catholic schools as their own category in the Nation's report card outcomes. And if you were to say that, if you were to group all the Catholic schools in America together that were tested on the Nation's report card, and you said that basically this was its own state, Catholic schools would be the number one state for education in America. So knocking it out of the park. One of the previous speakers also said something along the lines that, a lot of the students, there was an 80% number in that talk too. I don't remember the exact statistic, but it was they drop off in high school and college and leave and stop going to church. 80%. And during COVID, one quote that really stuck out with me was something from Bodhi Bakum said it best. He said, "We cannot continue to send our children to Caesar for their education and be surprised when they come home as Romans." So we saw the school board battles. We saw parents upset with what was happening in the schools that they're assigned to. And, that previous speaker also pointed out that, academics are great. We want our kids to be able to read, write, and do math, but you also don't want the school fighting against everything you're trying to do at home with your child. And I'd say there's no such thing as a religiously neutral institution. There's no such thing as a values neutral school if you don't have a great Catholic education and something that people can coalesce around. That's going to be replaced with something else. And I think that's why we've seen this proliferation of gender ideology in the public school system, critical race theory, other Marxist ideologies, because you basically replace that value system with something else. And that's, whether that's intentional or not, I'm not going to get into that, but I think that's just how human beings kind of act. If you don't have religion, you're going to put some other values in there, and sometimes they're not good. So we now have these 31 states that have opted in, and basically, one of the first questions I get is that, so $1,700, does that mean the scholarship's $1,700? Well, no, not necessarily. That's the donation to the scholarship granting organization. Cardinal Newman or others could say, let's stack a few of those and let's create a $5,000 scholarship for a kid. So the tax benefit is different than the person receiving. And currently, 90% of people in America that have school-aged children are income eligible for the program. So it's not universal in the sense that anybody can get the scholarships, but it's pretty dang close. And when I last saw the data, it's 90% of families are income eligible, which is a pretty near universal program. It's a huge step in the right direction. And, I'm here for a heritage conference too, and I had to come straight from there to come here. I'm going back there after this. But I checked into my hotel yesterday. I lived in D.C., but so I had never stayed at this hotel before. It's the Royal Sonesta off of Massachusetts. And I go in, I'm checking out the room. Oh, this looks nice. I open the window, and it's the AFT headquarters right outside my window. And I told my wife and the kid, I said, put them in the closet. You guys got to hide. They're going to be coming up the stairs. They're coming after me. But no, I mean, it's just Randy Weingarten has run that union into the ground. And I dedicated my book to her. Someone mentioned my book in the earlier, The Parent Revolution, because I thanked them for overplaying their hand and inadvertently doing more to advance school choice, homeschooling, and religious education than anyone could have ever imagined. And she came out with the book right after mine, basically calling people she politically disagreed with fascists in the title. She invoked Adolf Hitler in page 1. And not just, somewhere in the book, page 1. That's how she started. I think it was paragraph 1 as well. And she copied my book cover. I don't know if anybody's caught on to that, but the book covers look exactly the same. She was pressed by someone on a podcast, and when she had to respond to that, she said something along the lines of, all books look like this, or a lot of them do. It's a coincidence. One other thing that I'd like to point out about Randy is that the Freedom Foundation just found out by looking at their publicly available LM2 reports, the union financials that have to go to the Department of Labor each year. $1.4 million went from the union to promote the book project. No wonder it became a New York Times bestseller. Basically we're having a lot of momentum. One thing you might be concerned about that I've heard in different private school groups is that there's this notion that with government shekels comes government shackles. Should we participate in these programs? Should we accept any of the scholarship funding? And my quick response is, anybody who live in Maryland, you can get the shackles without the shekels. So you might as well give people the choice to take the shekels. But because in Maryland, a bill just passed out of the House, and the Maryland Family Institute, I believe that's the name of the think tank, fought hard against it, and it's dead for the year. But it passed through the House. It got stopped in the Senate. A little birdie or legislator, a senator on the Republican side, DM'd me on X and said, for what it's worth, I think we've killed the bill. But it had some Orwellian name. I don't remember the name of the bill, but it was something like, I don't even remember, but it was like, are you serious? Straight out of 1984. But basically what it did was, and it passed 100 to 35 in the House. It had veto-proof supermajority. And it regulated all private education, not just K through 12, but from pre-K through college. And it wasn't attached to a school choice program. It wasn't even attached to the big, beautiful bill provision. You might say, maybe there's going to be some backlash because maybe someone doesn't like Trump's name attached to it, or maybe they're going to try to sabotage the program. But you can get the shackles without the shekels. And I'd argue you're more likely to get the shackles if you don't have a coalition to fight back against those regulations. And I think school choice builds a broader tent, a bigger coalition to fight back when the time is right. But at the moment, the federal tax credit scholarship program, at least, has no additional government regulations. It even says the Treasury just had a roundtable on this last week, and they put out there that they made it clear they haven't put out the official rules in writing that should come in September, but that states cannot add additional regulations onto. They tried to do it. Colorado was going to try to do it because maybe some people in the legislature didn't want Jared Polis to opt into the program. So they started moving this bill to regulate schools that participated, and they pulled the bill after massive pushback, even in a Democrat-led state. So this wasn't just the governor doing the right thing, but the legislature saw the writing on the wall as well. And so that's only after you get people on your side, on your team, and I think school choice allows you to build that bigger coalition to fight back. And at the end of the day, it's all voluntary. If at some point regulations come, we should all fight back against it. But if they actually do pass it, which they're less likely to do so if we have choice, then we'll have a bigger tent to fight back into. And it's all voluntary, so you can opt out at that point. And if you look at states that have more freedom when it comes to freedom from regulations in education, they tend to be states that have more school choice. So lawmakers can walk and chew gum at the same time. The same ones that are deregulating private education also happen to be the same ones who are advancing education freedom in the form of school choice. The same ones who are getting rid of school choice are the same ones who are regulating homeschooling and other forms of private education. Think about Illinois. Illinois had a school choice program for low-income kids, at least. They had 9,000 kids on the program. In 2023, they axed it. Well, they didn't save it. It was sunsetted. It otherwise would have expired. And so they didn't lift a finger to save the program. Their governor, answered a candidate survey when he was running for re-election, and he said that he told the news the next year that he supported the program, and then two, he would sign a bill to save it if it got to his desk. Funny how that works. He probably knew it was never going to get to his desk. But right after that happened, the next session, what did they do? They came to regulate the homeschoolers next. So they can walk and chew gum at the same time. And if you're on Randy Weingarten's side, you're probably on the wrong side of history. I think I'll leave it at that and open up the questions. We have like 10 minutes left. But
Corey, on that, do you have to set up a foundation for the $1,700 donation? And can an individual entity set up a separate 501c3? Or do you have to be open to anyone to receive the money?
yeah, so one misconception is that people think that this $1,700 is for you send your own kid, right? So I know you were asking that part, but I want to clarify that really quick. So the $1,700 isn't for your own kid, but you could start a scholarship granting organization for your type of school, and then people can donate to it, and then those scholarships can go to your
It
students.
would have to be a separate.
It's separate from the person donating.
And it has to serve more than one school. Correct.
Yep.
You have to partner with some other schools
Yep.
to take advantage.
You can just
Yep.
NAPCIS.
Yeah. So do the Newman.
All your schools would get a part of the pie.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks.
Is there a better incentive to have the SGO in your own state where your school is versus
I don't think, I mean, it doesn't really matter one way or the other, but because you can receive the scholarships regardless of what state you're in. The only opt-in risk is for the students receiving the scholarships. If there's students in Texas and Texas didn't opt in, that would be a problem, but it doesn't really matter where your SGO is set up. And some other organizations are also partnering with SGOs that have already exist. So, whether you go Cardinal Newman types of SGO or another one, I've been collaborating with this group called ACE Scholarships. They're one of the leading. So,
ACE is
oh, okay. So ACE is great.
of the Catholic Education Fund, which is what NAPCIS is.
Bam.
Yeah.
So ACE is
It's
doing
the
a
Catholic wing.
yeah. So ACE is doing a good job because they've done this for a quarter of a century.
Yeah.
So why not let them manage it, and then that reduces your overhead for that, and then they benefit you by getting the scholarships. Yeah.
They give you everything you need to
Yeah.
start your program with your families. It's done. It's like doing your accounting out with some,
Yeah.
paychecks or something like that.
Yeah, I just saw that PragerU even launched an SGO that's managed by ACE Scholarships, and so they could even choose to say, I want it to go to schools that have PragerU content included. And so it's a really cool thing to see kind of unfold. I've never really worked with SGOs before until this kind of federal school choice program started rolling out, and there's a lot of players in there, but ACE Scholarships has been doing it basically the longest, and they've been based in 15 different states. They've already been working.
I think there were 13 states in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And then they've spent millions of dollars
Yep.
to expand out for this
Yeah.
very reason. And they were the ones behind the whole legislation to try to get this passed. So, and they saw what was coming down the road.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, good to know you guys are working with ACE. They're a great group.
Is there a cap to the amount of the amount of money, the amount of credits that an individual SGO can take in, or a national cap, the amount of money?
No, and remember I said things kind of changed back and forth. At one point, there was a certain it changed a bunch of times, actually. There was a certain $1 billion cap on the nationwide amount of credits, but now there's no cap. So you can have an unlimited amount of funding in a sense. I guess there is a limit if you do the math on how many taxpayers there are times 1,700, whatever that is. It is harder to in the original version, there was a cap on the total amount of funding, but you could get, $1 billion, you could get someone to give millions of dollars themselves and get the $1 million credit. But now the credits don't, people can still donate above the 1,700, but they're only going to get that 17. And for a household, it's 3,400 if you're married filing jointly. So there's that. But yeah, there's currently no. That's the limiting factor right now, being able to get that many people to donate, which it shouldn't be that hard, but there's a coordination kind of a learning curve, and you have to educate the public to know that, look, you're not any financially worse off.
I assume that national accreditation is a requirement.
For the federal program, a national accreditation is not an explicit requirement, but different states can have their own accreditation requirements. Many of them do. And also, just being accredited helps you with marketing too, and people might be more willing to donate to accredited schools.
How will this new initiative affect current school choice programs?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something I should have mentioned, that you can, so a lot of people, when I share the map, a lot of people are like, why isn't Arizona colored in on the map? Arizona has school choice. Well, this is a different type of school choice program, but it's very similar in that they're scholarships. The good news is, so with Florida being colored in and Texas now, you can stack the scholarships. So if you have this program that's like a $5,000, whatever the scholarship granting organization determines that amount's going to be, $2,000, $3,000, whatever it is, you could stack that on top of the $10,000 scholarship that they have in Florida. So you could have a $15,000 scholarship. So it's great. It's not. I would think it'd be a problem if you had a federal program kind of subverting the state level programs. I think education belongs to the states. And they should still be incentivized to pass state-level school choice programs, too. And the stackability gives you that incentive to not only have a federal program.
In a state like North Carolina, it's only like very partial, dependent on income. So you can see how stacking could make Catholic education that much more affordable.
Yeah, and I think recently North Carolina expanded their Opportunity Scholarship program to all families, and there was a wait list. It was crazy. It was like 50, 60,000 kids on the wait list. The legislature came right back. They cleared the wait list. And when it came to this federal opt-in, Josh Stein's, he vetoed it. So you don't need the legislature to opt in, but the legislature in North Carolina, for whatever reason, they knew that Josh Stein probably didn't want to opt in. So they sent him a bill saying, you should opt in. How about you do this? Sign it. And he vetoed it. And in his veto message, it was a little weird because he said, I don't need you guys to opt in. I can do it myself. And he said, I'm going to opt in and just use the money for public schools, basically, which is, it flies in the face of the intent of the law. You can't just choose to, and Treasury's making that clear as well already, that you can't pick and choose what types of schools as the governor are acceptable. So he basically wanted to double fund the public schools and not give people any choice, which it's a school choice bill. It's a school choice provision. And so the legislature came back and overrode his veto with exactly enough votes, because in North Carolina you need a 60% supermajority to override in both chambers, and they were able to do it. And this happened in Kentucky as well. Their governor vetoed, and Kansas, their Laura Kelly and Andy Beshear, they both vetoed. Their legislatures came back and overrode, and that's why those states are in. And a lot of people ask me, anybody from Virginia? We're kind of close to Virginia. So Virginia, Glenn Youngkin opted in. And when Glenn Youngkin left office and Abigail Spanberger won, a lot of people said, well, what is she's just going to undo it, right? But there's a catch. Once you opt in, you're in for that next year. And so the soonest that Spanberger could undo it would be for the 2028 year. Now you might say, well, man, there's all this back and forth. Maybe we don't want to mess with this, but it becomes a lot more politically damaging to undo something once people are already signed up. So that's another reason to jump in and try to get as many people signed up. It's kind of like in Florida. I said they have 600,000 kids on scholarships in Florida. When DeSantis first ran in 2018, the Wall Street Journal the next day had a headline that said, "School choice moms tip the governor's race in Florida." And it was because there was exit polling from CNN that found that black moms in particular came out much higher than expected for DeSantis, because his opponent, Andrew Gillum, called to get rid of the scholarships program that was serving over 100,000 kids at the time. They were disproportionately non-white, low-income kids. And, parents who might have disagreed with DeSantis on a lot of other stuff, they agreed with him on this, and they wanted their kid to get a better education. So I'm not here to sell the political success of school choice and why it's a good idea. Politically, it's a moral, it's the right thing to do, and it's the logical thing to do, but it also happens to have other side benefits as well.
You
Yes, so I wrote about this in the Wall Street Journal at least 3 times now with Josh Shapiro. So Josh Shapiro in 2022, he started getting called a hypocrite on school choice because he went to private school, he sent his kids to private school. His Trump-backed opponent, Mastriano, he said, hey, yeah, I support school choice, why don't you? You benefited from school choice, and so did your family. And Josh Shapiro did a smart political maneuver, and he said, no, I support it too. For low-income kids, I support Lifeline scholarships. He put it into his education platform on his campaign website. And so I wrote about this. I'm not really a partisan guy. If a Democrat comes out and supports it, I will give them a bear hug and say, this is fantastic that you're doing this. Jared Polis, Kathy Hochul, they're doing the right thing. And Josh Shapiro, I celebrated him at the time, and 3 different times I said, hey, now's your opportunity. He ended up vetoing his own campaign promise. He line item vetoed school choice. It was even worse than a regular veto. He crossed out the school choice part in the budget. And he turned around and pointed to the House. He said it was the House's fault, it wasn't my fault. But now, he could have never seen this coming, but now the decision's squarely in the hands of the governor. He can't point any fingers anymore. And now he's kicked the can down the road a little. I've emailed his team and had a Zoom call with his education guy. I forget the name of the education guy, but seemed like a good guy. And he said that we're waiting for the final guidance from Treasury. Well, they said that's coming in September. I don't know what the next excuse will be, but so that's kind of the lay of the land on Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania has a couple state-level tax credit scholarship programs as well. EITC, and there's some other acronym as well, I think. But they're only the average is a couple thousand per scholarship, right? Some maybe.
Well, there's EITC is up to, if a family qualifies, up to the amount of what your tuition is.
Oh, that's good. So, I don't know if you heard of EdChoice. It used to be called the Friedman Foundation for Educational Choice, but they're now EdChoice now. And they have like a different dashboard. If you can click on your state, see what school choice programs are in your state, which is kind of very helpful. And in Pennsylvania, I remember looking up, this was several years ago, probably changed, but the average scholarship, maybe it goes up to, fluctuate, but the average was only like a couple thousand.
Negligible.
Yeah, okay, so it pulls the average down.
EITC is good, but the teachers union in Pennsylvania, which is very powerful, every year is trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Because it gives school choice to families, financial aid, to afford what they're doing. So, wondering if Shapiro will ever opt in.
I think so. To come full circle, at the beginning I pointed out, the 21 drinking age is kind of, all the states didn't opt in immediately. It took about 4 years, and I think Wyoming was the last state. And so I don't think it's immediate. We already know it isn't immediate. We have 31 states. We don't have 50. I think at some point they're all going to read the tea leaves and say, why in the world would we allow our constituents to knowingly or unknowingly give money to our political opponents in the redder states? Why would we be subsidizing red states and not allow our kids to get a better education as well? And it doesn't touch any money from the local public schools. It's all private additional dollars. So why would you not do it? So,
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. You're wonderful. Appreciate it.